Hello and a warm welcome here to the Pitch Side Podcast. I'm your host, the HOD of the PSP. Like, share, comment on the YouTube version and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Make sure you enable notifications to receive all the updates from these podcast episodes when they get uploaded. And of course, follow us on social media site PSP on Twitter, Pitch Side Pod on Instagram. Listen to this on Spotify, Google Podcast or any other platform. And of course, help us on the way to our first game. Welcome to the episode. Welcome to the weekend preview of the show. We're not there yet, though. We have to hit some road bump on the way to reviewing the weekend. Of course, this road bump is called the Europa League, and the quarter-final took place yesterday, the first leg of it. And I think aside from one game in particular where things are really pretty much done and dusted, it looks like it is a well-poised, sort of round heading into the second leg. Ajax lost to Roma at home 2-1. They were leading, in fact, 1-0 in the first half, thanks to the goal from Davy Klaassen in the 39th minute with Dusan Tadic assist. Dusan Tadic managed to miss a penalty early on in the second half, and I think that's where the game turned around. That was the moment when the game, pretty much changed momentum, really. Not exactly in terms of the flow of the play, because Ajax really dominated the game and they were the better side by far. But definitely Roma had a bit of boost after the miss of that penalty, because at 2-0 things could have been different. And with realistically how good this Ajax team has been this season, like low-key they've been one of the best in Europe. I mean, I think after exiting the Champions League, they somehow turned the corner, and in the league they became ruthless. In the Europa League, they absolutely smashed it, and they have some of the best talent as usual, really, in Europe at the moment. It tells something, really, when they keep someone like Brian Brobby, a certain and a certified next generation talent, on the bench. I mean, they had a terrific game in my opinion, but Roma capitalized on the mistakes, really, missing the penalty. Beautiful free kick from Lorenzo Pellegrini, although the goalkeeper I thought should have done better, absolutely. Roger Ibanez makes it 2-1 for Roma in the 87th minute, and they take home a lead that is going to be absolutely crucial for them in the next game. Unlike Arsenal, though, who couldn't keep their lead intact, and although they take it pretty late inside the game, really, in 86 minutes, it needed Arsenal to score by Nicolas Pepe from an assist from Aubameyang. The game was pretty locked, not exactly anything exciting about it. 93rd minute, Thomas Holisch scored the equaliser for Slavia Praha, taking the game to a different route completely from what would have happened if Arsenal completed the game and finished it 1-0 to them. And that is going to be hard, really, and if anything, we should have been learning that Slavia Praha are really a tough team at the moment. Another Eastern European force in Dinamo Zagreb, but they dropped home. They dropped the points, so they dropped the lead on their home. They lost to Villarreal 1-0. The goal came in the first half, late in the first half, thanks to Jose Mourinho from the penalty spot. And finally, of course, Manchester United managing to defeat Granada 2-0 in a game that the most exciting thing about it, in all honesty, was the incident of a nude man running onto the pitch for some reason in the middle of the second half. I mean, there's no two ways really to describe it. I'm sorry. There's no two ways to describe it. If you didn't see it on Twitter, if you didn't see the memes about it, if you didn't see the videos, the comparison to what happened in the Champions League final back in 2019, I mean, you're missing quite something. It was probably the most hilarious thing that happened on the whole week, really. I mean, footballing wise, the four matches had nothing really special between them. But in this match alone, this incident, I mean, it was incredible. But overall, back to football. This Europa League tie is well poised, really, all of them, aside from the United game. I really think United have enough in them to just overpower Granada. Thanks, Granada, for watching. I mean, for 15 years back, Granada were in the 4th division of the Spanish League, and now they found themselves in the Europa League, which I think for them is the crop of the crop at the moment. So I assume this is quite the achievement. For the others, particularly I think for Arsenal, this is going to be hard and this is going to be tough. Roma-Ajax game, still well poised. Ajax could really show their quality away from home and win. Arsenal, 0-0 is not going to make them qualify. And if Slavia Praha could keep them as frustrated as they were yesterday, I think we're in for an Arsenal elimination, and Slavia Praha could go to the semi-final. But I'm keeping my prediction intact until we talk about those games in next week, hopefully, on the podcast. Of course, the second legs are going to be taking place next Thursday, and hopefully we will know by then who's going to be, of course, in the semi-finals. I predict United, and I think they should win for the final, really, not just for the semis, and we'll see who are going to be the three with them, predictably. Now that we're past the bump of the Europa League, let's talk about proper football, and let's really talk about the weekend preview. I think we can only start from one place, and one place in particular. It's La Liga. All eyes are on one match in that particular week and particular league, but unfortunately there's not only that match, there's also other matches around it. So it kicks off on Friday, kicks off today with Huesca versus Elche. There's Getafe Cadiz on Saturday, of course, kicking things off. Atletico Bilbao Deportivo Alaves at 4:15 kickoff, Eibar Levante at 6:30, and of course Real Madrid Barcelona El Clasico at 8. On Sunday it's Villarreal Osasuna kicking off things. Valencia Sociedad, Real Valladolid facing Granada, Real Betis facing Atletico Madrid, and quite a tough challenge as well for Atletico Madrid, and we're going to talk about the link later. And Celta Vigo hosting Sevilla, that is on Monday, to round things up. There's no way we can talk about any other match in the league and La Liga. They don't matter. They really don't matter. There's nothing matters this week aside from El Clasico. Now, I certainly talked a lot, I think, on this show about whether the Clasico will be important, whether it have any value, and it looked at a certain point of the season that it wouldn't have any value, and that Real Madrid and Barcelona are just going to be playing for the honours of being second and being behind Atletico Madrid. However, fast forward, I think, from a couple of months ago, in December, January, really, fast forward a couple of months forward, Barcelona and Atletico Madrid are only 1 point apart, and that was after the victory against Valladolid for Barcelona. That was tough as nails, and Ousmane Dembele had to salvage the 3 points, really. Real Madrid had to play a game between their last game in the league and El Clasico. They had to play, of course, after beating Eibar 2-0, they had to play Liverpool in the Champions League, and they beat them 3-1. But the game, I think, took out of them too much before El Clasico. It took out of them some physicality. I think it took some serious stamina out of them before a Clasico, a stamina that I think they will need against Barcelona, who pretty much are rested compared to them since they exited the competition already, since they exited the Champions League already from the round of 16. So you think, this game is pretty well poised. Those two clubs, I think, came from so much this season, and came from behind, really, and came from too many troubles this season. I think in particular Barcelona more than Real Madrid, because the turmoil in Barcelona this season has been absolutely... That was an SHIT storm in Barcelona this season. There was a presidential election, there was the debt problem, Messi almost leaving, and teetering on the edge of leaving, Ronald Koeman, not exactly knowing what he was doing for the first part of the season, but he improved, and finally sort of finding a proper system and changing Barcelona's identity, really, from the 4-3-3 we usually see to a 3-4-2-1. Being flexible tactically, I think, more than any other coach that came about before him in the last couple of years or so. Certainly better than what Valverde was doing and what Setien was doing, the last just two coaches before him. And, give credit to Barcelona, really credit to Barcelona, because expectations for the season were that Barcelona are going to be out of the top 4, out of the Champions League spots, they're going to have a horrendous season, Messi's going to be leaving, and all of that. In the end, it turns out quite well. They find themselves 1 point behind Atletico. They find themselves 2 points ahead of Real Madrid. And, this result, listen, only Atletico want this match to end in a draw. They're the only ones in the world that want this match to end in a draw. And even the draw won't really happen. Won't really be really that great unless they defeat Betis on Sunday. Because if they don't defeat Betis on Sunday, any other result is going to still keep the door wide open, and we're going to have a cat and mouse game for the last 8 weeks of the season. The league out of nowhere became competitive, and I know Listen, you might excite yourself and say, this is a title race, a great title race, and all of that. But in my opinion, this is more of Atletico Madrid's fault. This was more of Atletico Madrid's doing. Their sort of stubbornness, the sort of stubbornness of Simeone, not realising the moment, getting caught up in the moment, really, when they had 7 and 8 and 10 points of lead, and we were talking about if they win the games in hand, they would be, they would be, 13 points, 15 points ahead of Real Madrid and Barcelona, but that didn't happen. And surely, looking at the standings now, it didn't happen. And Barcelona and Real Madrid find themselves 1 and 2 points apart from Atletico Madrid, and 1 and 3 points apart from Atletico Madrid, and find themselves as close to Simeone's side as possibly can. And Atletico Madrid really didn't help their case, though. They shot themselves in the foot, I think, too many times this season, in the Champions League and in the league in particular. And we thought, well, they're going out to the Champions League and they will be, ready to tear the league apart. But they don't. They didn't. And they won't. And it looks like they're going to have a nervy end of the season. And if they manage to win the title somehow and end up winning the title, it's going to be like a cesarean birth. It's going to be like a cesarean birth operation, because that is going to be hard, and it should have been hard for Atletico Madrid in the first place. They had the command in the league, they had the opportunity to finish off things before the break, and had the opportunity to sort of, not make it hard for themselves and make this Clasico really redundant. I mean, if Atletico Madrid were 7, 9, 10 points ahead and had, normally won their games in hand and took the lead to 13, 15 points atop the table, probably I wouldn't be talking about the Clasico too much, because it wouldn't really matter, and I don't like to talk about a game and give it too much time here on the show when it doesn't matter that much. So I probably wouldn't have talked about a Clasico. I mean, it would still be important because it's a Clasico and it's Real Madrid versus Barcelona, but as far as the context is concerned, it would have been different had Atletico Madrid taken their shots. But back to the game in hand, really. Back to Barcelona versus Real Madrid. I think too much has changed since the first Clasico. Too much has changed since the first game those two teams played. Those two teams, Real Madrid and Barcelona, played the first game in October, and Barcelona were in a state. Like, they really were in a state. And throughout all of that, Barcelona and, the Barcelona fans were still optimistic that Barcelona are going to be winning. But they ended up losing 3-1, despite taking the lead, and, despite the fact that they were, pretty good, and at first glance, they were pretty good, but, the fact that at that time, Koeman still didn't know what to do with his side, the situation wasn't exactly that good, Bartomeu was still in the club, and, it was different times, really. I mean, Bartomeu was still at the club, there was still some sort of turmoil. Even Real Madrid themselves weren't exactly that great, really. They were coming off the back of some horrendous results in the Champions League, if people remember, and they saved their season back then. So, for Barcelona and Real Madrid, they come just a long way from that match. I mean, they were, I think, in such a state, both of them, in that Clasico, more to Barcelona because of, a multitude of reasons. But in terms of footballing, I think both came a long way from those two games in earlier season, and the game in particular, the Clasico between them. Both now are, both I think with different styles, but I think the same ambition is to just get past this, win this, and go atop the table, and at the worst of cases, just get close to Atletico, keep close to Atletico for both of them. I mean, again, a perfect result for Atletico would be a draw, but definitely Barcelona and Real Madrid are not going to be negotiating in terms of points. This is going to be just it. This is going to be the Clasico this season. I think for the last couple of years or so, this is probably the most important Clasico they have played in the last 2 or 3 years, because for most part, the last couple of Clasicos have been pretty dull and, pretty uninspiring and pretty unentertaining whatsoever, really. Because if you look at the Clasicos before this one, I mean, Real Madrid defeated Barcelona 2-0 in a game that, I think everybody knew that Barcelona are going to be beaten in it anyway, back in March last season. Before that, you have a draw in the Camp Nou 0-0. And, before that you have another draw in the Camp Nou 0-0. You have another draw. You have Barcelona winning at the Bernabeu 1-0. Then you have a Copa del Rey game where Barcelona defeated them 3-0. And then you have the draw between Barcelona and Madrid. I mean, for the last couple of seasons, it felt one of two things. It felt that either one side having too much advantage over the other, or that the Clasico doesn't have any sort of pull. And certainly since the exit of Ronaldo, I mean, the Clasico lost all of its shine, really. If not most of it. I mean, the Clasico doesn't exactly matter as much as it did when Ronaldo was there. But overall, this is a game that I think Zidane and Koeman should take absolutely seriously. The mistake is absolutely, I mean, forbidden. There's no room for mistake for both sides. They can't make mistakes. They can't make errors, because if they make errors, they lose, and they don't just lose 3 points, but they lose on a chance to catch up on Atletico. And I think Real Madrid are the ones probably in more need of a victory than anything else. I mean, they cannot afford a draw. I mean, even a draw would be bad for them, because it will keep them 2 points apart from Barcelona, and it will keep them as well, 2 or 3 points or 5 points or whatever's going to be happening in the next 34 hours when Atletico Madrid travel to Sevilla to play Betis. So that is going to be the situation right there. I think for Zidane and Koeman, it's all about being victorious. I don't exactly want to delve into too much tactics, because this game is not about tactics. It will never be about tactics. Barcelona and Real Madrid need 3 points. They need results. They simply need to win. There's no two ways about it. They simply need to win, and they will absolutely, I mean, they're absolutely in an absolute need for a win. Simply put it, 3 points for Real Madrid, 3 points for Barcelona, that's what should be happening. That's what should be talking about. This is what Zidane and Koeman should be thinking about. The 3 points are nothing but the 3 points, of course, in a Clasico that, again, it would have mattered less if Atletico took their chances and if Atletico won their games, but now that it matters and it's of all a crucial importance, now Zidane and Koeman are going to be putting all the eggs, I think, in the basket of their Clasico to win the league. Real Madrid, I think, still have more to do in the Champions League, so we don't know exactly how that's going to be entering into consideration, how it's going to affecting the stamina of the players. Obviously, I mean, their physical level. He has to put his strongest side. There's no question about it. He has to start with the Cruz, Casemiro, Modric trio in the midfield. He still lacks Varane, and he still lacks Ramos. And, he's going to be starting with Militao and Nacho. And unlike the game against Liverpool, I don't exactly think you can trust them against this Barcelona, because this Barcelona side have improved. Let's be honest, they improved. They could have turned things around against PSG in the Champions League and could have made a comeback to win. But somehow they didn't. And we end up now, talking about Barcelona of what could have been and what should have been. Definitely, I'm not the guy that want to talk about that, so certainly I'm going to be watching a Clasico with thoroughly, reviewing it of course on the channel here, and definitely trying to, understand how things are going to be going in regards to the league title in Spain. I mean, hopefully we have a great Clasico, if it is a half as interesting as the last one. From La Liga to the Premier League, of course, and this week also has some big games in it in the Premier League, definitely. It centers around the game between Man United and Tottenham, or between Tottenham and United, really. After the first game between them ended 6-1 at Old Trafford, it's all, I think, about revenge, really, for Ole Gunnar Solskjaer from that defeat that sort of almost made his life miserable, really, but considering where both teams are at the moment, it's, I think, pretty interesting, really, to see how the game is going to be played. But surely, of course, as usual, it's not the only game in town. Fulham host Wolverhampton, that's on Friday. Man City host Leeds United, of course, and they're on a good track after defeating Borussia Dortmund in the Champions League. And certainly in a need, I think, they don't need exactly to exhaust themselves before the second leg, and they're going to be just playing to, for the 3 points, for the record-breaking sort of things. At the moment, they're really, really running away with the Premier League title. Liverpool versus Aston Villa in a revenge-based game, really, on Saturday. I mean, it's the 7-2 is the result that I think put everything, in place and started the chain of events that led us to seeing what we're seeing from Liverpool, as of today. Crystal Palace hosts Chelsea in a London derby. Chelsea, of course, coming off the back the victory in the Champions League against Porto. They want to continue on the good path and also bounce back in the Premier League from the loss against West Brom 5-2. Burnley host Newcastle. That is on Sunday. West Ham United versus Leicester City. Of course, a game that has so much significance, I think, for the Premier League standings. Of course, West Ham are 4th now with 52 points, 1 point ahead of Chelsea. If they are victorious, they're going to be 2 points behind Leicester at 3rd, and they could somehow, from a team that trying to save themselves from relegation last season, they could have ended up being in the top 4, even in the top 3 this season, and that would have been quite the transition, really, for West Ham United. Tottenham versus Manchester United is on Sunday as well at 5:30, and that game as well, as I mentioned, important for revenge reasons. Tottenham, and United, since that game, the two teams, I think, went on opposite sort of momentum and opposite sort of direction. Not instantly, but it took a while, but eventually Man United went up and second, and Tottenham, I think, went down, really, to some bad situations comparatively. They still could be in the top 4, they're still in the conversation pretty much, but comparing where Tottenham was and when Tottenham were at the time where they beat United 6-1 at Old Trafford, and now it is different. Obviously you could give the excuse that United at the time didn't play the preparation game, they didn't have a proper pre-season. I think it was the common excuse for United at the time, at the early goings of the season, where they were losing at home, they weren't having the best of form, and their start of the Champions League was horrendous as well. So you think this game is different. Again, this is one of the games that the two teams came a long way from the first one, that you think circumstances are going to be changing for sure, and definitely United are going to be the favourites really heading into this one, despite the fact that Mourinho's Tottenham could still be pulling a result out of nothing, really. They could still be defeating Manchester United again and pulling the double on them, because you assume that Man United are going to be the favourites, they're going to have the more possession, I think, of the two, they're going to be having the better result of the two, and after Man United defeating Granada in the Europa League, pretty much resting some of their players, really, not starting, not starting with the likes of Martial or Greenwood. Benching a couple of important players really to keep them to this one. Although I don't think they have to be afraid about their top 4 place, really, but definitely they need to keep the momentum going. Of course, they need to show everybody that, they deserve to be, respected this season, and that they return to their normal place, really, at the top and near the top, really, of the English football. For Tottenham, for Jose Mourinho, the problems that they had as of late, the results that they had as of late, the elimination from the Europa League, the loss against Arsenal in the derby, the game against, the draw against Newcastle United, the late draw against Newcastle United, also you have, they had a couple of good victories before that. They had a good stretch where they had some incredible victories, and we were really asking, could they make a late surge for a top 4 spot, and then they lose against Arsenal, then they lose in the Europa League against Dinamo Zagreb, and everything falls apart almost instantly after that, really, for Tottenham, and somehow they managed to stay in the top 6 at the very least. Unlike Liverpool, really, they didn't have the horrendous injury list or the longest of injury list. As normal, I think teams would have normal injury list. I think that Tottenham didn't have that problem too much, really, in them. They didn't have that problem of the injuries that would nag them and that would affect them and would start tinkering with their shape. I don't think they had that. So, in my opinion, it's easily, I think, said than done for Tottenham to defeat United. Again, United are favourites in this one, and I really cannot see, why United are not favourites to win this one, and why are not favourites to, of course, avenge their 6-1 loss at Old Trafford. Of course, the rest of the games in the league, Sheffield United hosts Arsenal, that's on Sunday as well, and on Monday 2 games are going to be played. West Brom, after that victory against Chelsea, host Southampton, and Brighton Hove Albion host Everton on Monday to finish the round in the Premier League. The Bundesliga, of course, and it's a week that I think revolves really about the top 4 places, I think, in the Bundesliga after the league, I think, was done and dusted with the game between Bayern Munich and RB Leipzig, of course, last week, with Bayern Munich defeating Leipzig, seeing themselves 7 points apart at the top of the Bundesliga. It looks like all things are done and dusted, and the more focus is going to be on who's going to be finishing in the top 4, and even that has some sort of inevitability about it, considering that Frankfurt, who are 4th at the moment, have 7-point lead over Borussia Dortmund, the closest team to them on the table. On Friday, the round 28 of the Bundesliga kicks off with Arminia Bielefeld facing Freiburg. Bayern Munich, of course, kick things off on Saturday, facing Union Berlin in a game that I think Bayern Munich should not be caring about too much. And I mean, yes, 7 points isn't exactly the very healthiest of leads you could have on the top of the table, but still, it's a good enough lead to rest some players, to give you the opportunity to really play, not exactly with the second string, but definitely resting some players for the biggest of games coming in a week's time, of course, in 5 days' time against PSG in the Champions League second leg. The result that they had in the first leg, the 3-2, the whole game really was crazy, but the result itself needs a lot more work. And with the injuries that Bayern have at the moment, I think Süle and Goretzka could add them to the list of players that are injured. I mean, Bayern are low-key having a long injury list as well, if you look at it. I mean, they had Süle, they had, Goretzka, add that to Lewandowski, you add that to Gnabry, already you have Tolisso long-term, and you have, some players were injured throughout the season. So, low-key, Bayern had an injury problem as well, but somehow they kept their cool throughout, and I think they really still show that they're one of the best teams in the world, despite the fact that they had not a long list of injuries, but they had, some certain, amount of injuries throughout the season, peppered here and there, and they had certain problems in certain areas. I mean, Kimmich as well was injured, of course, and was absent for a good chunk of the season as well. So you think that Bayern Munich need to rest their players as much as they can. They need to play as with as less energy as possible, really, just like the game against Leipzig. I mean, I don't think that they will have a problem if they lost or if they drew against Union Berlin. I mean, at home, Union Berlin, are in the middle of the table, really. If you look at it at the moment, they're really, looking to improve their standings at 7th at the moment. They want to get into their Europa League spots later on in the season, and they want to look for those Europa League spots. I mean, they have hopes in those. I don't say that Bayern should let the game go and should let Union Berlin just win, but obviously I'm talking about reserving the energy for the game against PSG, where they still have a very legitimate chance, really, of going through. It's hard, but it's, I think, doable with a better, take in defense. I think some change in the personnel, and obviously we're going to get to that when time is due. But about this game, I think they need to rest their players. It's not a game that is actually, decisive, considering everything, considering that the league is pretty much done and dusted, really, at the moment. Eintracht Frankfurt, of course, facing Wolfsburg in a direct clash of top 4 contenders. I mean, Frankfurt's still looking, really, to improve their position in the table, but facing a side like Wolfsburg, the strongest defense, or joint strongest defense in the Bundesliga alongside RB Leipzig, I think it's going to be a very tough nut to crack. Hertha Berlin facing Borussia Mönchengladbach in a middle of the table, really, kind of a clash. Werder Bremen facing RB Leipzig. Borussia Dortmund travelled to Stuttgart, of course, with all the memories and the bad memories of the 5-1 result that they took, the drubbing they took at the Signal Iduna Park from Stuttgart in a game that, Dortmund with a better side somehow, but they still lost 5-1. You don't understand how that works, but somehow it did. Schalke, of course, hapless and hopeless at the bottom of the Bundesliga table, hosting Augsburg in a game that you almost certain that they're going to be losing. They only won once this season, and they lost 19 games, and they've drawn 7. I mean, It's just sad to talk about Schalke in this way, and hopefully for them they come back stronger, they can prepare themselves in a better way in the second division, and they will come back as strong of a side as possible. FC Köln facing Mainz in a direct relegation scrap, really. 23 points for Köln at 16, 25th for Mainz at 15, just above the relegation zone. I mean, for Köln, it's a must-win, I think, and I'm supporting them to do that just because I have a fellow Tunisian, of course, Elias Skiri, playing there and in the middle. And on Monday, it finishes off with Hoffenheim facing Bayer Leverkusen as well. missing out on the top four and, having a serious dip in the form from the time when they were top of the table in the Bundesliga before Christmas. Of course, before that loss to Bayern, that kicked off a whole sequence of, bad results, taking off Peter Bosz, of course, and assigning in the new coach for the club and assigning him, and having his first game against Schalke, of course, being victorious, against Schalke and his Wolf in his first game, and that is certainly important, I think, for the momentum of the club, and definitely will affect the rest of the campaign. They will try as much as they can to improve their positioning, of course, because they are currently in the playoff spots for the Europa League, sitting at 6th in the table. Finishing off our weekend preview, of course, when we go to Italy, and although nothing is really big on the weekend, really, in Italian football, but certainly it's about, the top 4 spots, really. The league is gone. I think Inter are going to be not qualified, they're going to be winning the trophy by the end of the season, and it looks like we'll have a musical chairs kind of game for the top 4 spots in the Serie A, involving, of course, Juventus, who defeated Napoli in the midweek, and I think a crucial result for them in order to keep their place in the Champions League and their historic place in the Champions League going in Italy, of course, since they pretty much, I think, should be conceding the fact that they're going to be losing the title this season to Inter Milan. The round kicks off on Saturday, of course, with Spezia facing Crotone, Parma facing AC Milan, Udinese Torino, Inter facing Cagliari, Hellas Verona versus Lazio, Juve faces Genoa, Sampdoria faces Napoli, Roma faces Bologna, Fiorentina Atalanta on Sunday, and Benevento Sassuolo on Monday to finish the round. So, as I mentioned, this is all about the top 4 spots, really. Milan, Juve, Atalanta, Napoli. You could extend that to Lazio and Roma, but I think Lazio more than Roma. And, the fact is, the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th place teams are not going to be playing each other this week, so there's no head-to-head competition between those. So it's all about, winning for the 4 of them. And it's pretty much, probably aside from Atalanta, I would say the other games for the, aside from Atalanta, maybe the Napoli game against Sampdoria is hard as well. But I think for Juventus and Milan, I think it's pretty easy games to win. Milan took the struggling Parma away from home, 19th at the table. They shouldn't be able really to pick up any momentum. Juventus facing Genoa, who are low as well on the table. They should be able to do enough at home. They did that away. They won 3-1 away, and they should be enough and good enough to win at home as well. For Atalanta, again, game against Fiorentina that's going to be really, really tricky. And for Napoli, also against Sampdoria, a game that should be, I think, pretty hard to predict as well. As far as Inter are concerned, it's all about, heading towards that inevitable direction of winning the Serie A title for the first time since 2010, since the treble season under Jose Mourinho. They're winning the Serie A title, and that is quite the achievement. And yes, it needed Juventus to have a calamitous season by all standards considered, and the fact that they won 9 in a row. By all standards, again, it is a calamitous season from Juventus. AC Milan dropped in their level dramatically, I think, in the last couple of months or so, allowing Inter a lot more ground, and particularly since winning in the Derby della Maddalena back in February, I think it was, important really to see that, Milan dropped in their level, allowing Inter a lot more ground, allowing Inter a lot more room, and Inter themselves, with now European football, no cup football to distract them, they really went about every game as it is their last, and, they're racking up victories. They made it 10 victories in a row last time out, beating Sassuolo in the midweek as well, in a hard game, despite the fact that Sassuolo, from another perspective, you could say that they were robbed of a victory, or at least a draw, because they played really, 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 really well, and they had Inter pinned for most of the game. But, that's what happens. A side that is coached by Antonio Conte is not going to give you a lot of opportunities, and when they have opportunities, they take them. Romelu Lukaku and Martinez managing to combine in terms of goals to finish that game off. And of course, Inter Milan, congratulations for them. They didn't have the best of seasons overall, if you look at it from a point of view of general results, really, but they had the best squad. They had the most fit squad for the most part, really, after a shaky start because of COVID situations and a lot of COVID injuries related kind of things. They, I think, now have the best sort of squad, and they're heading towards the title. And eventually they're going to be winning it. Congratulations to them, and they absolutely deserved it. That's it from me for this episode. I was your boy, the HOD of the PSP. Like, share, comment on the YouTube version of this video, and of course subscribe to the YouTube channel. Enable notifications to receive all the updates. Follow us on social media, site PSP on Twitter, page Setboard on Instagram. You can listen to this on Spotify, Google Podcasts, or any other platform. And until the next time, of course, I will be seeing you soon. And by the way, I'm going to be doing, of course, a review for the 6th round of the African Champions League. I wasn't able to do the preview for it, but I will be able to do the review for it on Sunday, hopefully. Until next time, I'll be seeing you soon. Goodbye.